Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, we've done a lot of really great videos on Windows and reasons to switch to Linux, and we've gotten lots of comments, 4,000 or so comments on those videos. I flipped through as many of those as I could today, and I put together a list of about a dozen or two really good comments that we got over there, and we want to talk about those. So these are going to fall under a couple of different categories. I'm going to go ahead and put thumbnails or timestamps for those down below. The first is wrong impressions of Linux. And I actually did not find a wrong impressions regarding terminal. I know there's a few in there, but like I said, I sifted through 4,000 comments. Didn't see any. We will address that before we get to the first questions. Second is valid comments. When people tell us something really valid, which is true, we want to talk about those. Honest questions. Some people that are like, really, hey, we kind of want to have a couple questions. We want to talk about Linux praise, and a few comments were just excellent. So we had to wrap up the video with those. Just like we do our news tomorrow, we wrap up with Sillyville for that very reason. So let's go ahead and have a look at our list. I do realize I should have made the spacing in between the questions a little bit easier so you can follow along on screen if you would like to. But what we're going to do here, of course, this is done in LibreOffice, definitely the superior Office suite on Linux. All right. So the first one under wrong impressions, this comment, like I read this, I'm like, what? Guy says Logitech, Elgato, and Logitech, so Logitech twice apparently, don't support Linux. So I'd have to buy all new peripherals to switch to Linux. I think it is often overlooked that people are trapped into Windows by the peripheral manufacturers. I don't know what peripherals exist except Logitech. From the web camera that we're using Jitsi right now to all of my keyboards, all of my mice, everything I have is Logitech. I think I have a Bluetooth Microsoft mouse that's on my Surface that I barely ever use.
They got Razer brand mice and Kingston brand mice.
There's some high end stuff like that. But
most of the gaming companies that make the motherboards make their own keyboards and stuff.
Yeah. Which the thing about keyboards, mice, and general peripherals. Now, I don't know if you're talking about something weird or obscure, but general peripherals, they have been so baked into basic BIOS for so long, everything supports them. And so I have no idea what this person's talking about. Now, I don't know what Elgato is, although I think Uncle Bonehead said that, what they do, I forget. He told me what they do, and I forget what they were. So if he can tell us again, I'll keep an eye out over there. But we also have Solaire, which is an application in Linux to reprogram, reset, fix, repair, etc. all of your unified Logitech receivers. So I have no idea what this guy's talking about. Linux works perfectly fine with Logitech. I don't know what Elgato is, so I can't comment on that. He even commented, I think it was him that also said on our Matrix server today that his wife has constant problems with printers and scanners on Windows, but his all work perfectly fine. So, and I think that was him who said that. I can't remember, but it's just like the peripherals generally work. Wacom tablets, they work on Linux, at least under GNOME, Cinnamon, Budgie, a few other desktops. So this is definitely follows under the category of a wrong impression. Anything else about those?
I got all Logitech junk myself. I haven't had any problems except this microphone here, and I think that I think it's the plug that it came with, the USB plug. The pins are all loose in it.
Is that the same one you were having problems with a few months ago?
No, that one's over there, and it's ready to go to the trash. But they are different microphones. The Blue Yeti's a better built microphone, has a different circuit board and stuff like that in it. And with that one, when the mic, when you're done using it and you hit the mute button on it, it stays in mute mode, even though you put your computer to sleep or reboot it. This one, when you reboot it or take it out of sleep mode, it's automatically turned on, and you have to mute it by hand.
Okay.
And somewhere, like I think in 2000 or 2001, Blue sold their line of microphones and stuff actually to Logitech, but kept the Blue name.
Yeah, which they still work. There might be something funky with that one. Uncle Bonehead here says in the comments that Elgato makes the screen capture controllers for OBS. So I don't know anything about them. So I don't know if that works or not. Any other comments on that one?
I had a Logitech keyboard mouse combo for a few years, and I ran it on Linux Mint, and it worked just fine. And also used it on Windows, so it was a dual boot on the same drive, unfortunately. But I had it for Windows. It was Windows 10 at the time, and Linux Mint on the other partition, and it worked just fine. So I don't know where that comment came from.
Yeah, it's like weird out of the blue.
Mice. The other laptop I got over here has got an iHome mouse on it, which is a brand like Walmart would sell.
Yeah. Yeah,
the computer in the living room's got a Kingston mouse on it, just fine.
Yeah. So the point is, these peripherals work just fine. There's no, I mean, unless you're doing something super obscure like one of the 3D mice or something, you're generally not gonna have any issues. You need to.
They even work with an Xbox controller. This isn't a problem. I got a PlayStation 1 too, and it accepts it as well.
Yeah, which by the way, the computer that the controller that I use for playing video games is Logitech as well. So I mean that all works. I did forget to do it first, but the other one that I didn't find one for, but is a common one I see is, I don't know all those terminal commands. You don't generally need them in most instances of Linux.
So speaking of peripherals, when my brother got his first Linux computer 7 or 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I don't remember. But he got an old Mac that someone was selling for cheap. And so I replaced the hard drive on it to get a bigger hard drive. But I couldn't get the wireless Apple keyboard to work in Linux for some reason. There were some problems. I couldn't get it to work. So, but I just circumvented by attaching a USB keyboard with a cable and so on.
Yeah.
So I told him about this keyboard and said that it came with the computer, but he could use the wired one. And when I visited him maybe a month later, he is a computer noob. He has no idea of how to research hardware problems of any kind. Whenever there's a problem, he calls me, and but within a month, he by looking around in the control center in the Magea Linux 7, I think it was at the time, he managed to pair his Apple keyboard with his computer.
Yeah. Yeah, we do need to move pretty quick. We got like 20 questions, so we can't spend 5 minutes on each one. Uncle Bonehead, though, says the PS4 controller works fine. Shiverstorm has an Xbox One, works fine. So peripherals, you're not going to have an issue. Next one. I just wish that Linux had better driver support. If they did, they would have no problem switching back. Driver support generally is better in Linux, except for, again, obscure items. And some of the later end NVIDIA. Hardware. What's up?
And a brand new hardware, brand new display cards and so on.
Yeah. Now, this does, though, depend on which distro you're running. However, classically, Arch has been better because it rolls so much quicker. Debian has been the worst. However, the last version of Debian, Bookworm, they now have a separate repository for firmware which updates a lot quicker, which allows you to get better drivers faster than they have in the past. And so even with Debian, that is starting to shift a little bit. So the driver support is actually really good. And the only times I've ever needed external drivers have been things like printers and scanners, and they make Linux drivers available. Every company that I've actually bought them from. Any other brief comments on drivers?
Yeah, so my brother 2 years ago, he bought a new printer, and so I helped him configure the printer for his new Linux system, and it was an HP printer because of the in HP they have a single driver package that supports almost every kind of printer ever released by HP. Is in this, but But this printer didn't work with this HP lip package, so I had to download, and so you had to manually install. But once that was done, everything worked quite well.
Yeah, drivers, not a huge big deal. All right. Next one, using Linux presents significant challenges. Oh, I see HP printers come up. Let's see what we got. Using Linux presents significant challenges, including the difficulty in configuring color printer, particularly printers like HP, the absence of a comprehensive Office suite. I just have to laugh hysterically at that one. Similar to Microsoft Office. Furthermore, multiple Linux distributions leads to excessive fragmentation, lack of consistent software support. Moreover, the absence of game support for integrated GPUs from AMD and Intel processors make problem solving more difficult. Setting up WineHQ and its binaries is also a daunting task for many users. Ultimately, people seek the level of abstraction that Windows provides. Okay, so I have no basic experience in configuring specific color profiles for printers, although I know Linux Mint has a color profile tool in there. I'm not sure if that's screen or printers. I don't think that's much of a deal, but I'll let you guys, if you guys know anything about it. Comprehensive Office suite. LibreOffice is more comprehensive than Microsoft Office. Okay, you got to let that settle in. It is more comprehensive. That is that it does more things. It supports more features because Microsoft Office focuses on the docx file format, which is severely limited in its capabilities compared to the open source document type file, ODT, which LibreOffice uses. LibreOffice itself is more comprehensive, although there are a few things I'm sure Microsoft Office can do LibreOffice can't. We've also had people on our channel that have said, I was required to use Microsoft Office for my college work. I used LibreOffice the whole time and nobody knew the difference. Because as long as you're setting your LibreOffice to default to docx and you're installing Microsoft fonts that anybody you send documents to have, they don't know you're not using Microsoft Office. Excessive fragmentation, we've talked about that a little bit, which is not a huge deal and doesn't necessarily impact software support generally. And I have no general knowledge about game support for integrated GPUs, so I'm not going to do anything there. So go ahead and Salvo, take it away.
Yeah, so the only there are the two areas where using Microsoft Office is the only solution. One is if you are in an environment where you're actively using the Access database, which is part of the Office package. That does not work with the LibreOffice equivalent. You have to transfer the data somehow. And another area is so this is my mother's husband. He recently retired from his job as a computer something. He never had a formal education in this field, but if he died while hired by this company, the whole company, this is a big company dealing in billions of dollars. The whole company would shut down for 3 months just seeking a replacement. He uses Excel quite extensively for almost anything. But he uses the advanced formulas that are used in Excel. And he tried to import his Excel sheets into LibreOffice at one point, and they do not work in any way at all. So if you are a really advanced user, there might be some issues.
Yeah, we acknowledge that. You know, the upper 1% might have an issue, but the average user, it's just an issue that you're lazy and you don't want to use a different software. That's what it is. Dan, how difficult is it to configure WineHQ, and any comment on the integrated GPUs? Dan is our gaming expert if you're new.
Integrated GPUs, if you're talking about laptops with the integrated GPUs, if you have an NVIDIA integrated one, you can usually go to the NVIDIA website and you can find with them. You need to figure out what model GPUs in your laptop to begin with. But find that model number, and then you can actually download a driver and install it. I think with AMD, they're built into the kernel.
Yeah, this guy says integrated GPUs from AMD, and I've not had any problems with integrated AMD.
Yeah, but he's a problem. But the argument that he's using, in my opinion, is invalid, because if there is a problem with integrated CPUs, it doesn't matter what operating system you're using.
I mean, think what he's getting at is Microsoft might support the integrated GPUs a little bit better, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, because there is a lot of the high-profile games that people are using. I think
but are you using integrated GPUs for those?
Yeah, but my specific point is that several of the AAA games or the big popular games that people are using, many of them have hardware requirements that you have to have a dedicated GPU, which renders the argument invalid.
Okay, yeah,
that's true too.
Yeah, we might need to see some of the commentary on that. Anybody have experience with the configure color printing? Like, is that a legitimate thing or not?
The only problem I had with the printer is when I bought this Brother printer, it would not automatically shut off, and about every hour it'd move the head back and forth. And it did strange things like that.
I think what he's getting at is advanced color profiles, but I don't know for sure.
I don't know, but I do know I had to update the firmware for the printer, and it's been perfect ever since. But you know, you have to use a Windows virtual machine to do that.
Yeah.
The only problem I have with the colors and printing is because I have a laser color printer. I don't have an inkjet printer. But so on a laser, you don't get good photo prints of in any way. The color will be a little.
And that's generally happens with laser in general. So.
Yeah.
All right, the next one is, why doesn't the Linux community get together to make software for Linux? Unless that happens, many users like me are stuck at Windows or Mac. We have significant investments in Windows and Mac software. Unless there are viable alternative in Linux, we cannot switch. Like, the Linux community has more alternative for software than you imagine. I think what you're getting at is my particular software doesn't work. And the problem is that that's not up to the Linux community. That's up to the people who package your software. So if enough people are using Linux and say, I want to use your software, but there's not a Linux port, they'll eventually port to Linux, especially since, you know, right now their White House initiative had suggested, you know, stop using C and start using Rust. Well, Rust is much easier to compile the same application for complete cross-platform, whereas C++ you had to do different things in the compiler, to my understanding. But if you're looking up a particular piece of software, head on over to alternative2.net, type in that piece of software, and you will find dozens of Linux alternatives for most applications. And most of them are going to be competent pieces of software if you want to take the time to learn them. There may be, obviously, there are circumstances that is not a valid way around, for sure. We completely acknowledge that. You know, I don't think there's any good free and open source CAD that is nearly as good as AutoCAD, to my knowledge.
Yeah, there is those specialty software packages that nothing else will do.
Yeah. And those are legitimate reasons you would need to keep a Windows around if you're required to use such things. Ivan, anything to add? You've been quiet the whole time. You're still
I was just thinking, just like you were talking about, like you know, the publishers needing to package the Linux packages and stuff like that. It's like, yeah. It's like a lot of these people, they're like, okay, this big name software piece, they don't have a Linux version of it, so they're saying, well, the Linux community has to make it. It sounds like that's what they're expecting. I could be wrong, but you know, it's like, yeah, we need the big name companies would need to be told for however long, from however many people it takes, to get them to actually go, okay, we'll actually port this over to Linux.
Yeah.
and they don't.
Then you always have the problem with Microsoft throwing their money around to these companies and stuff like that to make it Microsoft only, you know, just for their behalf, because Microsoft has a history of actually just, you know, buying out, like, let's say they bought out Bethesda, you know, for gaming and stuff like that. Now they're liquidating the team. They're just, what they're doing is they have a really good thing about taking the competition off the table.
Yeah. And that's certainly a problem.
So I just opened the Wikipedia article on the Debian version history. So the current Debian 12, they have, I'm at the point of creating more software. The current latest Debian stable has 64,000 packages available for installation.
Yep.
But Debian is special, and also the derivatives, in that one source package can create several packages, because you can install just a part of something that you need. So they are 34 or almost 35,000 different source packages.
Yeah.
So there is plenty of software.
Yeah, so it goes out to just say you need to look for alternatives, not just say, well, my piece of software doesn't work. Well, you don't need that piece of software. You need what that piece of software does.
Yeah.
And our last one under this is, I don't see a widespread switch to Linux until there's MS Office for it. Dude, there are like 15 competent Office suites. You got LibreOffice. You have OnlyOffice. You have WPS. You have SoftMaker, which I don't think that one's entirely FOSS, is it? But it's there. You have, you know, both LibreOffice and OnlyOffice both support full internet-based collaborative work. So you have two solutions for that, which can completely replace Microsoft Office or Google Docs in the cloud, of course, Office 365. And then there's easily a dozen other applications that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. OpenOffice still exists. And these, it just takes a little bit of work to use these on your home computer as a replacement for Microsoft Office. Again, we get if you're that upper 1%, but every person making this excuse is not in the upper 1%. That is our section on wrong impressions. Now we move on over to valid comments and petting kitties. He just showed up right next to me. All right, so valid comments. First one, as much as I would like to use Linux, their support for games is so far subpar that it's not worth thinking about it. And the other half of my computer life is regulated by a company IT, so totally on my control. But as a kind of compromise, I stick to Windows 7. I hope that Windows 7 computer is highly secured and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But that's what I might do. Just keep it off the internet. Obviously, if you have your computer life is regulated by an IT company, you have zero say in that. And as far as games, gaming can work depending on the games that you're doing. So this can be a valid comment. Anybody want to add into anything?
Yeah,
to
so
that?
this is wrong understanding of how things actually work. So the popular games that companies create, they are creating them for either one of the gaming consoles, like the PS4, 5, and Xbox, and so on, or they create them for Windows, and in some cases also for Mac. So it's not that Linux doesn't support them; it's the game companies who do not support Linux. So it's the argument is turned on its head.
Yeah.
Well,
Actually,
Steam went through great strides, especially when they went and developed the Steam Deck, which comes out of the box with Linux on it already. Anything that you find in the Steam store will most likely run with no problems, you know, on a Linux computer. They have a database called ProtonDB. If you go over there, you can see where people have posted the game. You go in the game you're using, and people posted how it works and how they got it to work and what components you need to install for the game to get it to work. I know it's a little hanky-panky, but there's some cross-language that goes between a Windows game and a Linux computer that's got to be translated for the game to work good. A lot of Windows games run much better on Linux than they do on Windows.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
And I found that out you know, the kind of the hard way. But
I was asked this weekend, I need to try and get Borderlands 3 working for somebody, which is possible. He said there's a video he found that has terminal commands. He's not super confident with the terminals. So.
Go to Proton BD and see if you can install it through Wine or use Lutris.
Yeah, the first thing we're going to do is upgrade his computer because I literally think he's still on Mint 20.
Wow, that's
so. Yeah, we need to upgrade his system, so we're going to do that because I think that'll probably solve most of his problems.
And also, if you want to do gaming, choose a distribution where the Steam client and so on is available for the distribution and not as a Flatpak or a snap package, for instance.
Yeah, that's something we should look at.
When it comes to games, I can tell you this: don't bother with any of the Microsoft games that are made by Microsoft or any of their companies they bought out. They're booby trapped. Right out of the box.
And the same with and as far as I understand, any game that has some kind of anti-cheat software.
The Epic Games Store that carries that kind of stuff. Also, their games like Alan Wake 2 and stuff like that. There is not a Linux workaround yet for those.
Yeah, the thing is check that Proton DB before you decide if you're going to try and run it, because you'll be able to see if other people who have more experience have gotten it to work or not. So the next valid comment: I was done with Windows when MS started ignoring the hosts file. They became hostile as a force, invading my computer. I always have terminals open when I was there before Windows 3.0, and I used to like Windows when it did what it was told. Don't dual boot, get a new PC, put Linux on it, keep your old Windows machine around for grunt work. After 6 months, you'll laugh every time MS shoots their foot. 5 years clean now. All right. Well, congratulations on 5 years clean of Windows first. Now, the host file, they will still respect the host file, but I did find out as of Windows 10, the old way of doing the host file was 127.0.0.1, which meant home. That caused your system to bork out, so you had to replace all those with 0.0.0.0. But it would still respect the host file doing that.
And also, it might be if he has a problem with the browser using a browser and the host file not working. It could be that the browser is configured to use the modern encrypted DNS queries, which completely bypasses the host file by design.
Yep. Yeah, it does depend on a few different factors. You can still get the host file overrides to work on Windows. It's just not the same as it used to be. I don't think I want to mention anything else on that particular one. There is a great comment about setting up PCs that's different than the advice I generally recommend, so I wanted to include that. That's a little bit later. Next, did they not learn from Ubuntu and Amazon debacle? Yeah, so if you're new to Linux, what is this? Going back about 15 years ago now. Ubuntu decided that it wanted to try and make things easy and pull in some affiliate revenue, so they added Amazon products into their search bar on Unity. And that caused a giant mess. That was the first big Ubuntu exodus. And
it was the first time that Richard Stallman actively recommended people to move away from Ubuntu because of this.
Yeah, yes. Because basically, anytime you go in and just do a simple search, like on your basic search, start menu or whatever you're calling it, your basic user menu, it would send that query also to Amazon. Well, that's a problem if you're focused on privacy. And so, fortunately, they dropped that shortly after, and then they added a component later to allow you to do that if you wanted to. But, of course, they stripped out of the core. But, of course, that's in response to the videos were about Microsoft throwing ads into everything. I always had an issue with Linux, which is easily fixable but can't find the fix. My hardware manufacturer provides some special adjustment systems for my speakers. I want to copy those adjustments over from Windows to Linux. Windows uses Realtek audio drivers. How do I copy these settings over? That's the problem. Realtek is one of those things that doesn't work well under Linux. So the Asus VivoBooks, which are a fairly cheap but otherwise pretty good brand netbook computers that are coming out these days, they don't run well under Linux because they have a lot of Realtek in them. Even as of Linux Mint 22, whatever the latest one is, even that one was having some issues with that. Although the Edge might have that solved, but I don't know for sure. Realtek is going to cause you some problems. So that is valid. If you have a computer with Realtek built in, you might consider other options. Other comments on that one?
Broadcom's another issue you might have problems with.
Yeah, Broadcom and Realtek. If you see either of those on either mouse drivers, Wi-Fi drivers, audio drivers, that computer will have problems with some Linux. In fact, a lot of Linux. There might be some that look into it, so you're going to want to find something that is easy to install. Proprietary drivers like Ubuntu. You might do something MX Linux. I don't know what type of black magic run with the Dolphin does in that thing, but the thing supports every piece of hardware I've ever thrown at it. like I don't know how, but it does. And then which other ones? Anything with Ubuntu base, because it has that proprietary driver server, but that doesn't mean it will run it. It just says you have a better chance of finding it if there is something. So you really need to research if Realtek is in there.
Yeah, I came across one actually recently, and when I traced it traces it back to like back in 17, I guess, is RA Link for a Wi-Fi adapter on a laptop. It just doesn't work in Mint, and so I researched it. And, it is out there and it would work, but it used to be carried, or it used to be supported in the Linux kernel, and then it got dropped. And yeah, I could do a workaround for it. I just haven't done it yet because I'm lazy.
The USB AC wireless adapters from TP-Link, those don't work in Linux either out of the box. There are drivers for them, but out of the box they don't. There's other brands do work without a problem, but those ones we picked up a couple for my friend and they did not work, at least on some versions of Linux that we tried. All right. Another issue is distro agnostic. My internet speed is always 3 megabytes per second when I connect to my personal hotspot. I have a 5G data and unlimited plan. It was 11 to 12 on Windows. Same issue doesn't occur if I connect on my cousin's router. His house is beside mine. He allows me to use it. Lets me use 30 to 35, more than Windows even. I have no idea what's going on there. I was thinking maybe a driver, maybe it's another Realtek, but I don't know. Anybody have any ideas on that?
I don't.
I really don't either.
Yeah, I've never seen that. I mean, I've used a lot of hotspots. It could be something, the modem on the phone. It could be the wireless adapter inside the computer itself. I don't know. That's one I'd have to look at the computer myself and see what's going on.
Now, usually when my wired internet goes out and I use my phone as a supplement hotspot, I gotta usually sometimes fight with it to get it to actually handshake with the computer. But eventually, after putting up a good fight, it finally gives in. Yeah.
I've never had problems with that personally for me, but of course I'm using Lineage. So
there's a comment on YouTube that I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's a lot of letters and numbers, but he says that he's just glad we are past the days of end this wrapper.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Next section is honest questions. So these are honest question ones. Is there an actual reason where Windows on bare metal would be preferred over a VM? I don't know, Dan. You use Windows and VMs a lot. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I do. Matter of fact, I got Windows 7, Windows 10, and Windows 11 all on VMs. If you have the hard drive space for them, they do work wonders. There's a lot of things you can do with VirtualBox. You can actually do USB pass-throughs right to your USB devices for Windows, which makes it really good if you got specialized tools for hard drives and junk like that are installed on your Windows 10 installation. You can pass through the USB cable to that to actually work on your device. But
the
the drawback of having Windows on a VM is the graphics support is not there for games or anything. I mean, it's there to use to write a paper or use a tool or something like that. But getting out into actually drawing things with CAD or anything like that, that's not a good choice.
So if you're doing something GPU intensive, it's better to keep a Windows build floating around for that purpose. Yeah,
at least a Windows build hard drive in a drawer.
Yeah. And of course, the other thing is if you had some piece of hardware like a motherboard firmware that doesn't have the ability to update with a USB drive and it requires Windows, something like that would be worth keeping a drive with Windows around just to do that. But so that's the times that a bare metal would be preferred over a VM.
Well, like I said, I had to I had to update the firmware in my printer. I did that through the Windows 10 VM. It worked perfectly fine. Motherboards today, usually they have some kind of at BIOS level upgrade tool. And you don't never have to go past that. My machine here, you just turn the machine off, plug the USB with the firmware on it into the designated port, push a button, it blinks 3 times, and then it does the upgrade without I think they call it flashback something.
Yeah, that's what my board does that too. On the same thread, between Proton for games that don't use anti-cheat and either wine emulation or a VM environment for other apps, I really can't see where Windows would need to be bare metal. That might be the same comment, and I just forgot to include an extra space. So we'll just include that on the same comment. Next one. I am going to try to dual boot Windows 10 for VR, Photoshop, and stuff, and Ubuntu for VR gaming and everything else. Wish me luck. Well, first, good luck, but I'm going to give a little bit of small advice / warning. If you're dual booting 2 operating systems on the same hard drive, Windows and Linux, if the Windows update updates the boot sector, it will wipe out Grub and reinstall the Windows bootloader, and Windows does not let you boot into Linux. And so you might run into a problem there. Whereas Ubuntu bootloader will let you run Windows. And so if you run into that problem, you will need to keep a drive around that you can reinstall the original bootloader onto that drive to fix it. This is why I recommend, if you're going to do this and if you have a setup where you can have dual hard drives, you want to put the 2 operating systems on the 2 separate drives, including their bootloaders, and then use the one-time boot menu in BIOS to choose which drive to call the boot record for.
Usually it's F8 Usually it's F8 or something like that, and it'll bring up all your bootable drives. You just select the one you want to boot into, and then you're playing.
Well, it's Dell computers, Dell, Lenovo, it's F12. HPs, it's usually F9 or F11. MSI boards, or MSI motherboards, I think it's F11 on my computer here. And then I've seen a lot of F9s as well. So it's going to be one of those for the one-time boot menu. Other commentary on that one?
If you have your Linux drive set up with a small EFI partition that's FAT32, Windows 10 will try and write some information on that if you boot into Windows 10 from the boot selection, not from your hardware. But it's usually the system folder information or something like that. It's nothing dangerous.
Yep.
It just wants to take ownership of it while it's running until you turn it off.
Yep. All right, next one. Just got a Windows message that my license will expire soon. Now I'm running Ubuntu 2 hours later. Well, congratulations for running Ubuntu 2 hours later. I congratulate you on that, and I hope it's going well. But as far as that Windows install's going, run an antivirus, because I'm pretty sure you got a scam. Your Windows license is not going to expire.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great comment.
Yeah, I have a fun anecdote. So in the mid 2000s, in one of the Norwegian IRC channels, it was one of the Linux-based channels. Someone pasted a link to. I don't. It was one of the IT forums where someone was asking for serial key for the latest Ubuntu release, and boy, did we have fun with that. So two of them acted serious, knowing full well that they were having fun. They suggested him to go to the Pirate Bay and search for Ubuntu serials keygen.exe.
All right. The next one is the one that takes his level of advice opposite of what mine generally is, which is pick up another smaller computer or do something else. Here's what he says. And so this is just divergent from what I usually do, but there's nothing wrong with this either. In fact, I'll tell you some of the advantages and disadvantages. He says, do not follow the common recommendation to breathe life into an old computer with Linux. That's not for beginners. The ideal experience for a beginner is to buy a shiny new cheap mini computer for $150. Make sure it uses NVMe drive, remove it and store it because it has Windows on it and you might want to restore to it. Buy a new NVMe drive and install it into the new computer. Install Linux on that. Linux Mint is an excellent beginner's choice. You will move beyond it later, or you can serve you permanently. You may have to attempt installation several times. This is because you've clicked next, 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 or okay, without reading what the screen is telling you. All right. I actually really like this comment.
That may void the warranty of that computer if it's a new one.
Yeah, I mean that.
And getting into it with the with the M.2 drive, getting into it may be a real challenge. New computers are not easy to open up.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you got. If you're talking about a desktop computer, it's not a big deal. If you're talking about a laptop, it might be. Depends on the manufacturer. Yeah. So yeah, so that's the downsides. The downsides is this. Number one, if you're buying a new computer like this, just be aware you might void the warranty with this methodology. You might not. Be aware of that. Secondly, if it's the brand new or shiny one, which if it's a cheap mini $150 computer, you're probably not going to have this issue. But what he's getting at is, yeah, sometimes the older computers is a little bit harder, or some of the distros designed for older computers may not be as user-friendly as something like a Linux Mint Cinnamon or something like that. And so what his advice is giving us here is to say, rather than just trying to restore an old computer, buy something new that's cheap specifically for the testing purposes. Take out that old drive because you might want to put Windows back on it, and then buy a new one. So we might have, $200, $250 invested to try Linux. That's not bad if you have that money laying around. Yeah, if you don't, try that breathe the life into the old computer with Linux Mint XFCE.
I find if you can find a used one that's about 3 or 4 years old, in that price range, it'll be a more powerful computer than a brand new one, and it will have more ports to select different things all the way around it.
Yep. In fact, I'm actually thinking about going to my storage unit and picking up some of the older computers I have laying around there, installing Linux on them, and selling them at a garage sale. I think I'm going to do that because they're doing a community garage sale around here soon. So.
Yeah, and if you do the OEM install, and then it will be a more professional looking for those who actually get them.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to do that, but I also would like to be able to showcase what it is, or I could showcase what it is with other computers. But
yeah, but you can do that with the OEM because it doesn't activate the welcome and pick your username until you click the icon of shipping to.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I can play around with it. I did forget about that. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. I'll just
not only that, this person that wants to buy a brand new shiny computer and put Linux on it, then you're dealing with the newest stuff with the driver problems again.
That is the other disadvantage. If it is an right off the line computer, then you will have problems. But I doubt you're going to find that in a shiny cheap mini computer. I think that's the hinge pin of this comment. That as long as you're not going out and buying a $1,800 fresh off the line, top of the line everything,
if it's a small $200 computer, that's brand new, it's going to have the freshest chipset in it and everything else, and you're going to have problems with kernels and drivers.
Yeah,
and
well,
stuff like
maybe,
that.
maybe not. That's really only going to apply if you have the latest hardware. But going to Best Buy and buying a $150 computer is probably not going to be the best hardware. I think that's what he's getting at.
Yeah, my cousin, my second cousin, he got a brand new Almond computer, and we couldn't even put Ubuntu on it. It wouldn't
really?
let him.
Yeah, some of the new computers, you do have to watch that. And actually, that does make a good point, Dan, because some of the lower-end computers are harder to put Linux on than the mid-range computers.
Yeah, because the Windows bootloader and all that stuff is not actually part of the hard drive. It's a hard permanent memory chip.
That is a valid point. So you got to be careful with that part as well. That's why I like going to Best Buy and pick up like a year-old open box computer. You can usually get those pretty cheap. And also, fun fact, at Best Buy, you can usually talk them down an extra 10% of what they're already talked down to. You just sit there and hem and haw. I don't know. You look at it, you put it back. You look at it again, you put it back. And then if you can knock another 10% off, I'll do it. Great way to do it. Okay. Next. Agree to install proprietary software when asked. These drivers and such that you will need. What are we on? Under honest questions. I'm not sure why I put that there. Oh, I think this is part of this comment. Again, I think I messed up with my spacing. I think that's part of the previous comment. All right. Good video. I'm primarily a Windows 11 user, but I'm playing with Linux Mint, nice OS. The one thing stopping me from switching full-time is MS Outlook 365 that may be solved when Thunderbird gets native Exchange server support in the near future. I will tell you, Evolution has had native Exchange support for years. So if Exchange server support is keeping you there, use Evolution. I think it's a superior email client anyway over Thunderbird. But it has that. Office 365, that depends on what you're looking at. If you're just doing web-based stuff, yeah, it should work just fine. Go ahead, Selby.
Yeah, so so I Googled this when I saw the document. And one of the hits is one of the US EDU domains, the University Information Technology Services, whatever that is. But they have instructions for how you configure Evolution with Exchange, and how to configure Thunderbird with Exchange, because you need to install or activate a plugin in Thunderbird in order to make it work. And they have specific instructions on how you do that.
Yep. Yeah, those are all in there. And then the Office Outlook 365, I'm not sure if we're talking about the desktop applications or what thing. Of course, the new version of GNOME, which is now shipping in Ubuntu, can now access your OneDrive files native to the operating system itself. So if that's something you need, that is available there. All right. This guy says, I have been trying to move my Windows system over to Linux, but really having some issues with hardware compatibility. Any suggestions for a Razer Blade 14 RTX 3060? Fedora 39 has been somewhat stable, but not a fan of the interface. I tried installing Pop! OS before, but could not successfully get through. The installer kept crashing out. Not sure what else is a good starting point. Since others have tend to bash Ubuntu these days. If you're just starting out, I would say give Ubuntu a try. Yeah, we're not a fan of it sometimes because it pushes snap and does some more corporate-y type things, but Ubuntu is still, to this day, a very good stepping stone to other Linux. The other one you might try with this is Arch, as this computer you might be having latest hardware issues, which Fedora should work. But if you don't like GNOME, on Arch you can choose your desktop environment. You don't like Fedora because it's GNOME. Or you can try one of the Fedora spins. Try the Fedora Plasma spin. That might be highly recommended by Solbu, right?
Yeah.
Ubuntu has it.
And also, just a point of when people are recommending Arch, if they are thinking of a particular derivative of Arch and not the actual original Arch, they should say so, because I am a computer nerd, and I've been using computers for almost 30 years at this point. I am unable to install Arch because the installer is too difficult.
Okay. I would say, yeah, okay, to that point, let me correct that. Try Manjaro, because it gives you a variety of desktop environments. It is reasonably stable, though occasionally blows itself up. It's going to give you Arch, but Arch more tested. The other ones, like, I run Endeavor. Endeavor is more challenging for a new user. It does tend to implode itself more than other versions of Arch I've tried. I still run it mostly because I have it, and it's easier for me to keep it running than it is to reinstall something else at this point in time. But Manjaro is good. I still run that on my Raspberry Pi, and it works great. It sounds like you might be having a recent hardware issue, so that's probably going to solve your issues. All right, last one in this category. Doesn't all software beg annoyingly for upgrades, including all open source software? No.
No.
You can set it to, depending on your distribution, you can set it to auto-update itself. You can turn the upgraded tools off altogether, so they're not ever telling you an update is needed. Like in my Endeavor system, I just removed Palmux. It doesn't even tell me. It just doesn't alert me. It's Arch. I know there's an update. The question is, when do I want to run it?
Yeah,
I'll update right now, and there'll be an update in 1 hour.
In Linux, unless it's a security issue, an update's more or less a suggestion.
Yeah. Also, the software generally, like, we're seeing a moving trend with like Flatpak and Snap and things will auto upgrade themselves a little bit more, but it usually does it. If you have that turned on, it usually does it without telling you about it. But at the same time, usually your software is all managed by your package manager, and you only run the updates when it wants, when either you have it set to do so or when it reminds you, things like that. Go ahead, Selby.
Yeah, so for those who are not moving or are delaying a testing of Linux because of they are afraid of too many update notifications, there is a big difference in how this is handled between Windows and almost any other operating system. So in Windows, you get a basic package of a few things, and everything else you have to manually download from somewhere. In Windows 10, one of the later editions of Windows 10 and 11, you have the software store, which is an attempt to change this, which is for the better, in my opinion. But you traditionally have to go to some website that you know which have the software that you need, and you download this and install it, and it will many of them will manually check for an update. If there is one, they will notify you that there is an update. This doesn't happen in Linux. Everything or most.
Well, it can.
Yeah,
there are a few applications that do, although there's nothing you can do about it because it still has to be upgraded to the package manager.
Yeah, and so there's several packages in Linux who do this, but we normally disable those or remove those functions if it is practically possible, and if it is too much of a hassle, then we have to live with it. But so there is one single notification normally in Linux that there is upgrades, and it will tell you how many packages need to be upgraded, and in most cases how big the upgrade is, and yeah.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe Fedora now automatically downloads and applies updates following the path of Windows. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that is the case. Ubuntu has the option to do that. Linux Mint has the option to do that. I know Linux Mint, it's opt-in only. Ubuntu, I think it's also opt-in. So there are some distributions that are allowing you to do automatic updates if you want it, but usually it's opt-in.
Yeah, and for those who have it by default, like in Fedora, like you mentioned, you can disable this, yes. And there is no update coming down the line that will enable it when you have explicitly told it to do not.
Yep. Yeah, that is a simple toggle button inside of it. In fact, that's controlled in Fedora. It's controlled in the GNOME software store and Ubuntu. I believe it is in the new Ubuntu Snap store. Linux Mint, it is in the Update Manager or Advanced Settings. All right, we have just a couple. I mean, these next two sections will be pretty quick to get through, which is good because we are way over on time. But hey, I hope it's been a fun and valuable video. What we got viewing? Yeah, we're up to 76 on the Tubies. Thank you guys for coming along. We got 12 on Odyssey, and we got 13 on Rumble. Man, for a while, Odyssey and Rumble was keeping up, but YouTube's growth has occurred. Thank you guys if you're new around here. But let me wrap this guy up. All right, Linux Praise. Linux plays all my AAA games, too. The 90s are over. All right, so apparently this guy's AAA games are working fine on Linux as well, so that's good news. I use mostly Windows for the games, but also Mac and Linux. It used to scare me thinking about ditching Windows, but I could see it happening. They have such stupid people all over that place. It's bound to fail. Looking at the charts, Mac and Linux are growing and Windows is shrinking. Yeah. Also, it's in my news to cover eventually. It's not going to be in the news, so it's going to be in a week video. The market cap for Windows 11 is dropping. People are going back to Windows 10.
Yeah, for the last 2 months, it has been dropping.
Yeah, so we'll cover that soon in a video. I have a bunch. I already have a bunch more Windows articles to do. It's like I don't want to turn this into a Windows channel, but hey, it's working. It's causing the channel to grow, so that's good. All right. Made the switch on Saturday to Zorin 17 on my laptop. Once I get things backed up on the desktop, I'll be switching over there as well. Ads in my OS was the straw that broke the camel's back. Well, congratulations on Zorin. Zorin is an excellent distribution to try out if you're looking for one.
Yeah, so and now they are also, I think you have made a video this recently, that they are pushing ads into the start menu as well.
Yep. So the start menu ads have rolled out into production on an optional update. They're still testing the ads in the settings menu. That's still under the preview. This guy said he switched to Linux 2 days ago. Can play all my Steam games with no problem at all. Very good. All right, and we have our LOLs. These ones just made me chuckle. Surprised they don't have a splash screen every time you turn on your Windows computer that says, today's sponsor is, and then let you log in.
Yeah, I saw that one, and I'm like, yeah, it's almost kind of like they kind of go to the approach of, let's say, Linus videos. They got a sponsor at the beginning and one at the end, so you can get one when you log in and one when you log out.
That's another great opportunity. While Windows is shutting down, consider a Coke.
Yeah. Here's our featured sponsor.
There you have it. As I said below, I've been running Linux, Ubuntu, Mint, Debian, and others full-time 15 years. People keep playing the upgrade game. I stick to what works. I get good, free updates, upgrades, and always find good hardware for free or nearly free. I've got laptops, desktops, desktop beasts, and even Chromebook all over the place. Run on Linux. Suckers. Commenting about ads in the start menu, this guy says, instead of calling them ads, I call them boycott notices.
Nice. That's a good one.
And Linux will do the same soon. Don't you see this coming everywhere? It's a question of time, like Dead Dollar, WW3, EVs, BS, etc. No. It won't, because there's a large portion of the Linux community that just won't deal with it. So if Ubuntu starts throwing them in somewhere, in fact, they kind of have. They started promoting their Ubuntu Pro in the terminal. This is why Ubuntu is kind of fading down a little bit. People just stick a fork in it and go this direction. So
yeah, if there's one thing that you can count on, and that is, if the major distributions started doing ads in the system somewhere, people are going to fork the distribution and do an ad-free version. This is the reason that we have so many distributions today. That at some point someone needed the system to work in a different way, and they existing one either didn't care for it or so they did their own version, and now we have hundreds of different distributions to choose from.
Yep, there you go. So yeah, that's not going to happen. All right, we're going to end the recording here, and we'll go through our comments streaming in. So subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Of course, you can also check out, we have enabled the shopping tab over there. Right now, that gives you stuff on our shop. You can buy this hat over there. Coffee cups and things. Although this is my favorite coffee cup on the store, you can buy it on my shop at shop.switchedtolinux.com. I can't seem to add it to my YouTube page yet. I'm going to talk to the guys at YouTube and figure out why that is. But we do have stuff, and also I have onboarded a graphic designer who is wanting to learn how to do more graphic design, and he has sent us a new design. So we're actually going to phase out some of the tinfoil hat time stuff soon. So if you like that brand stuff, you might want to pick it up now while it's available. We're going to delist some of those. We're going to go more with more of a brand of switching over to Linux without the tinfoil hats and things like that. So just be aware of that. So if you do like that tinfoil hat times type stuff, you can pick that up now over at the shop.switchedtolinux.com. As we got a few more design ideas, we'll go ahead and phase some of those old ones out and phase new, better ones in. So with that, subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so, and we will see you guys in the next video.